Although it's February, and this is my first episode back from my year-end break, welcome back, it feels like a lifetime ago because so much has changed in this short little bit of time from my last episode that I published in early December. It's amazing what a few months can do for you. And toward the end of last year, too, in episode 87, called Find Podcast Success While Doing Less, that episode is a good one to listen to before this one because it's kind of a continuation or maybe like a little addendum to that episode. Where are you on your podcasting journey to make your podcast more integrated with what you do and your values? Especially in today's world when, we're still trying to figure out what to do with less time, less money, less capacity, all of that sort of stuff. So if you haven't listened to episode 87 yet, make sure you go find that one and then continue on to this one. Because the world has changed. It doesn't matter which part of the world you live in. And I usually don't get very political. This podcast isn't political at all. And I don't slide into that realm. But I feel like with everything that I do, whether that is my personal life, my podcasting life, my business life, everything is all intertwined. So what does that political landscape actually mean for podcasting as a whole? And then more specifically, what does it mean for your show? A few things actually. So listen in. This is episode number 90 of the Podcaster's Guide to a Visible Voice. So let's go. Hey, welcome back to the show. Oh my gosh, this is episode 90. And as I usually start my year, I like to go back on, what did I do on my podcast? What do I want to talk about this year and things like that? And I realize I'm going into my 6th year of this particular podcast. I've done podcasting before with a different show, but this is my 6th year for this. And that also means I'm going into my 8th year in my podcast production company. Who would have thought when I started this adventure? So thank you so much. Whether you are a longtime listener, whether you've known me from the beginning of my podcast production company or even before then, if I'm lucky enough to have a few listeners that are from before that time, or if you're relatively new here or this is your first episode, it also still feels very much new to me because every time I produce an episode, every time I come up with an idea, I take it from that curiosity and learning angle. What can I learn in this moment? And how can I share that learning piece with you? So thank you so much for coming on this ride, listening to this specific episode. And we're going to talk a lot about what's shifted in the past few months since I last recorded an episode from December and what is going on right now in February and into the future of podcasting, of course, for your show. So what is shifting in podcasting? Like I said at the top of the show, I don't usually go political, but podcasts as an industry have gone political. It really has taken that mainstream effect because of the US election back in November, and we're starting to see how that all played out with the podcasting space. So the way I see things is, in some ways, this is all a good sign for the podcasting industry as a whole. Just like when celebrity podcasts were starting to be a big thing, that started to drive the industry even more. I'm thinking maybe Dax Shepard has his podcast, Armchair Experts. That started in 2018. And then a few years after that, you're starting to see podcasting mentioned in TV shows. And in fact, there are shows that are based on this idea of podcasting, like Only Murders in the Building, which I love, love, love. And what are they? Just finished their 4th season? Or they're going into their 4th season? Either way, it's a hilarious show. And there's all these goofs on how the podcast is actually made. And as an audio person, I'm like, oh, you can't do that. But whatever, it's a TV show. It doesn't matter, right? And it's fun, but it's good to see it in mainstream. There's also based on a true story, which is about podcasting as well, and how do you make money and that celebrity status of a podcast and stuff like that. So it's really good to see that the podcasting industry as a whole, because of these celebrity type podcasts, has made it more accessible for you, an independent podcaster. Like, why do you care that there are celebrity podcasts? Why do you care that there are politics in podcasting now? As an independent and someone who is not on a network show, how does this really impact you? And the whole bottom line is that it legitimizes the platform. Meaning, if your show is produced well and it stands out in your industry, you become the leader. I mean, even before the US election, being Canadian myself, Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, in June of 2024, he was on Adam Grant's podcast, Rethinking. Love Adam Grant. And I'm not saying to listen to this episode because, oh my gosh, Justin Trudeau was on and politics and this stuff. But it was just that Adam is also using this podcast as a little bit of behind the scenes of how he even got the Prime Minister onto his show. He's an American going to Ottawa to meet Justin Trudeau. I don't think that would have normally happened in an everyday scenario. But now, 2024, 2025, into the future, podcasting is a legitimate media platform. So taking this into consideration for your podcast, how are you using your podcast as a media platform? Meaning, what is it doing for you, whether that is having a business behind it, or you're marketing your personal brand, or maybe you're just getting awareness for an organization or a brand or something that you work with or work for. What is that point of that podcast? Because now you're creating your own media assets. That's what your podcast is. So in order to do that, we need to start thinking about what you want that podcast to do and to make your listeners feel. Because that feeling then translates into action. So let's dig into that feelings bit first. When you're creating your podcast, what's feeling new? So if you're trying to figure out, okay, do I still want to do interviews? Do I want to add solo episodes? What does the format of my show look like and feel like right now? And do I want to change anything? What's feeling stagnant, either for you or maybe for your listeners? And how do you want that refresh to happen? Because again, you're going to look at this from a media platform lens. How does your podcast play into your overall work? If it's a passion project, or like I said before, part of a business or organization, what are these goals? And how does your podcast align with that for this specific year? Because like I said, everything's changing, everything's new. It's a great time to have that fresh eyes on something. And it's never too late. If you're listening to this episode and it's way past February and not the week that it is published, then that's totally fine. It's never too late to think about your podcasting journey that you've been on so far, even if you haven't launched a show yet. You were still on this podcasting journey because it all started with that spark of an idea. Where are you on this journey? Have you created hundreds of episodes? Are you only on your 5th episode? Are you on your 100th episode? What has shifted for you since that spark of an idea until today? What's different? I mentioned earlier the episode Doing Less for Your Podcast. That's episode number 87 that I did at the latter half of 2024. This is still happening now in 2025, in the beginning stages of the year. I'm seeing people wanting to rest, to shift away from that constant productivity and the daily grind. So listen to that one if you haven't yet. But part of that episode too, I talk about finances and being Canadian, paying a lot more for things online because they're in US dollars, and our dollar right now is 68 cents? 68 cents per US dollar. It's not as great as it used to be. So it means that as Canadians, we are even paying more and more and more for the same product or service from last year. For me, on the business side, that's great because I am getting a lot more Canadians who want to work with me, right? Working with a fellow Canadian, few and far between in the audio world and the podcasting space, so love to support the Canadians where I can. But what that means is that everything at the start of the year is playing out with a lot of uncertainty. People are trying to figure out, do you want to pay more for this? Or should I streamline and not pay for a lot of things here and don't pay for this there? And, podcasting isn't cheap. To run your own show, to host a show at least, it does take some money or time. It's not an easy thing to do if you want to put some intention behind it. So, with all this uncertainty and all this back and forth of what do we do now in this climate that we're in, I want you to take a step back as well. What can we control to keep the fear of the unknown at bay? Sometimes these tips can feel like very broad and very nebulous. But I think for one, this one is something I didn't want to mention at first because it feels kind of like cliche, but the more I thought about it, I didn't want to edit my own thoughts and kind of stay true to my speak with spirit ethics that I've got. It's gratitude. And you might see it online and be like, oh yeah, I want to be grateful for this and thankful for that. But it really does help. And from a personal standpoint, I do journal every single night. It's quick bullet form. It's not a bullet journal per se. I don't know if you've heard that type of journal before. But this is what I do. And I find it works simply for me because they're easy points and it's just to get things out of my head. So I'm not constantly thinking about stuff before I go to bed. So I do this every night. Again, whatever works for you. If you are a morning person, maybe you do this in the morning. But for me, 5 things that were a success could be as simple as tasks, that you checked off, that still counts. Then the next section is 3 things I'm grateful for and my role in it. What did I do to actually make that happen? So usually I don't do I thank the warm weather today. I thank the sunshine. Well, what did I do to make the warm weather happen? Or what did I do to make the sunshine happen? Right? So not just this nebulous gratitude, but how did this gratitude happen because of something that you did? The last section is 3 actions I took to drive any big dreams or made my day really, really happy. What were those 3 things? And I've been writing down these points every night since 2019. I would probably say I may have only missed 1 or 2 nights because I was sick. If I was traveling, I'd bring my journal with me, my notebook. It's not really like a formal journal. It's just a notebook of blank pages. And then I just put in these notes and headers every day. So I can say that the gratitude changes the perspective. And when you are grateful for others and yourself, your brain's chemistry changes and it can shift your experiences. There's actually a lot of research about how gratitude changes mental health for the better. Even last September, there was research from Harvard Medical School saying how gratitude not only brings happiness, but also lengthens lives. So living longer, who wouldn't like that, right? Living longer is amazing. So throw a little gratitude in your space. It's that creation of a habit. Can be easy as taking down those notes, like I say, that I do every night before bed. But this habit that I really enjoy too, because this way I have time to myself. I get to wind down for a better night's sleep. And I actually do this as the very last thing, not to get too intimate here, but it is the last thing I do in the bathroom before I literally get into bed. The house is really quiet. I'm usually the only one left awake. And then I do my journaling and I go straight to bed. And actually, you'd be pretty surprised how podcasting actually comes up in my nightly journal. Comes up more often than you might think, whether that is, something I've been listening to that I learned from, a podcasting client that I'm working with, actually maybe something that I learned from one of my clients, right? There's just so much that goes into podcasting that you can actually be grateful for. Even though this isn't a podcasting gratitude journal, it's not specific to podcasting, but it does help in your podcasting world. And another thing during all of this uncertainty, a podcast as your media platform is a way for you to control the message. Unlike all the bro culture that is there that I've been trying to stay away from, and we are seeing play out in the real world, when we, as a podcaster, speak with spirit, and I mean it in a heartfelt, tactful way, not like, I'm gonna yell and scream and speak on what's on my mind. Like, that is a really unkind move, right? Like, we're not being mean-spirited here. We are not just saying whatever we want on our mind. When we're speaking with spirit, it is in a way that we say it with the intention of love, with an understanding that we are doing our best with the situation that we have, and that we have this platform now, this podcasting platform, to share that message. So what do you want to say? It's your podcast. It's not social media, which can shut down or change algorithms or do all sorts of weird things that you can't control. But this idea that you can still be a leader in your industry with your podcast because you have created your own media platform. Your message never goes away until you want it to. So I hope you got a little bit of something out of this episode to start your year or to continue that fresh podcasting energy for the year. Keeping this one short because trying to stay away from all the doom scrolling and all the news. I watch a lot of news, so I'm trying to stay away from that right now. So food for thought. How do you feel in this climate, this political climate that is affecting your podcast, if any? Because I'm sure you never even thought about that connection, right? But there is. Because now podcasting, it's a legitimate media platform. People are coming to this space to share their message as well. So how are you going to promote other people's voices with intention? We're going to dive deeper into a lot of nuance in this sort of realm this season. So I would love your hot take on what do you want to hear? What do you want to move towards this year? Leave me a voice note. I'd love to hear your voice. visiblevoicepodcast.com. There's a purple button that says send voicemail. Leave me a note there. Or email, as always, visiblevoicepodcast@gmail.com. And on the next episode, like I said, we're going to continue a bit on this theme here. It's an extension. We're going to talk social media. No, it's not what you think. I'm not a big fan of social media either. I don't know if you've noticed or if you're even on. I'm not really on there too often. LinkedIn and Instagram are my places, but they're very restricting of my time, or I am restricting its time, maybe is a better phrase. So next episode, we're talking about social media because the idea is we're going to be marketing without social media. I'm going to talk to Amanda Laird, who is the founder of Slow and Steady Studio and a marketing communication strategist. She has more than 20 years of experience in communications, PR, and management, and now helps solopreneurs, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations do just enough marketing to reach their goals their way. I love her just enough because that's what we're talking about here too, doing less, right? So you're going to want to take some notes with this because Amanda knows so much about marketing, and I've worked with her in different ways, including her as my client, but also in her helping me with my marketing strategy. So you'll definitely want that notepad, physical or virtual notepad, and take some notes. So we'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening to the Podcaster's Guide to a Visible Voice. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd share it with a podcasting friend. And to reveal more voicing and podcasting tips, click on over to visiblevoicepodcast.com. Until next time.